Welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to tell the story of a man who embodied this silent strength, a man who reached the absolute pinnacle of the special operations world, yet remained at his core a humble team player from a small town. This is the story of Jason Workman, a Navy SEAL, a member of the elite SEAL Team 6, a husband, a father, and one of the 30 American heroes lost in a single, catastrophic moment that shook the special operations community to its very foundation. His is not a story of a lone survivor or a dramatic last stand that became a Hollywood blockbuster. It is something deeper, more resonant. It's a story about the quiet integrity of service, the unseen costs of a long and brutal war, and the profound tragedy of a mission known by a sterile call sign, Extortion 17. To understand Jason Workman is to understand the soul of the modern warrior, and to honor him is to remember the silent majority of heroes who live, fight, and sometimes die, far from the public eye. To truly grasp the path Jason Workman would walk, we have to travel back in time, not just to the day he was born in 1979, but to the world that shaped him. America in the late 1970s and 80s was a nation in transition. The ghosts of Vietnam still lingered, casting a long, complicated shadow over the public's perception of the military. It was the era of the Cold War's tense finale, a time before the 24-hour news cycle brought distant conflicts into our living rooms with jarring immediacy. Jason grew up in Blanding, Utah, a small town nestled amidst the stark and beautiful red rock country of the American Southwest. He wasn't born into a military dynasty. His path wasn't preordained by generations of service. Instead, his early life was quintessentially American. He was a gifted athlete, known for his prowess on the high school football field. And football, especially in a small town, is more than just a game. It's a crucible. It's where a young man learns to sacrifice for the person next to him, to push through pain when his body is screaming to quit, to understand that the success of the team is paramount to any individual glory. He learned the language of brotherhood on the gridiron, a language of shared struggle and mutual reliance that would define his future in a far more dangerous arena. Those early lessons in teamwork under the Friday night lights were the first unknowing steps on the path to becoming a SEAL. As Jason came of age, the world was changing. The Berlin Wall fell, the Soviet Union crumbled, and for a brief optimistic moment, it seemed like the age of great power conflict was over. But new threats were gathering on the horizon. The first Gulf War offered a glimpse of a new kind of American military power, and the simmering conflicts in places like Somalia and the Balkans hinted at the complex, unconventional warfare that would come to define the 21st century. It was against this evolving backdrop that Jason Workman, the high school athlete from Utah, felt a calling that would take him far from the red rock canyons of his youth. His journey began not in the Navy, but in the United States Marine Corps. The Marines are renowned for being the nation's 911 force, a brotherhood forged in the toughest basic training in the American Armed Forces. For a young man seeking the ultimate challenge, a way to test his mettle and prove his worth, the Marines were a natural fit. It was here that his raw physical talent and innate discipline were honed into the skills of a professional infantryman. He learned the core tenets of honor, courage, and commitment, not as abstract concepts, but as lived realities. His time in the Marines provided the unshakable foundation upon which his entire military career would be built. But for some, the horizon of challenge is always expanding. Within the disciplined world of the Marine Corps, Jason heard the whispers of another, even more demanding calling. A brotherhood that operated beyond the front lines, in the sea, In the air and on land, the Navy SEALs, the allure of the trident, the symbol worn by these elite warriors, represented a peak of human performance and dedication that few could ever hope to summit. It was a world of high-stakes, no-fail missions, a place where the bonds of team trust were absolute. The decision to leave the relative security of the Marine Corps to attempt to become a SEAL was audacious. It meant starting over. It meant voluntarily subjecting himself to one of the most famously brutal selection processes ever devised by any military in the world, basic underwater demolition SEAL training, or BUDS. To say BUD-S is difficult is a profound understatement. It is a 6-month psychological and physical meat grinder designed with a single purpose: to find the microscopic percentage of men who will not quit, no matter what. It is a world of constant, cold, perpetual exhaustion and unrelenting pressure. Instructors, seasoned combat veterans themselves, orchestrate a symphony of suffering designed to break a man down to his very core, to see what, if anything, is left. There's the surf torture, where trainees lie in the frigid Pacific waters until their bodies tremble uncontrollably, their teeth chattering a frantic rhythm of misery. There are the endless runs in soft sand, carrying heavy logs and boats, every muscle screaming in protest. And then there is Hell Week, 5.5 days of continuous training, with a total of perhaps 4 hours of sleep. It is a waking nightmare of mud, cold, and pain, where trainees hallucinate from exhaustion and their bodies begin to break down. It is here, in the darkest moments of Hell Week, that the true character of a man is revealed. It's not about the strongest or the fastest. It's about the man who, when faced with the absolute certainty that he cannot take another step, somehow finds the will to do it anyway, for the sake of the men to his left and right. Jason Workman passed through this crucible. The football player from Utah, the disciplined Marine, had the physical grit, but more importantly, he possessed the one non-negotiable trait of every SEAL, an unbreakable spirit. He earned his trident. He had become a Navy SEAL, but his journey to the apex of the special operations world was not yet complete. After proving himself within the regular SEAL teams, his performance, skill, and quiet professionalism earned him an invitation to screen for the most elite and secretive unit in the U.S. military's arsenal, the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, universally known by its former name, SEAL Team 6. If the Navy SEALs are the NFL, DevGru is the all-pro team. It is a unit composed of the most experienced, most mature, and most skilled operators drawn from the existing SEAL teams. Their mission is national-level counterterrorism. They are the ones sent after the highest value targets, the ones tasked with the most sensitive and politically risky operations. To be selected for DevGru is to be acknowledged as one of the best, a master of the craft of special warfare. Jason Workman was now a member of this clandestine brotherhood. He entered a world of intense, continuous training and rapid deployments. The years following September 11th were the busiest and most dangerous in the history of U.S. special operations. In the mountains of Afghanistan and the sprawling cities of Iraq, DevGru was at the tip of the spear in the war on terror. They operated on a nightly basis, conducting lightning-fast raids to capture or kill key enemy leaders. The work was relentless, the stakes impossibly high. Every mission was a complex dance of intelligence, precision, and violence, executed in the dead of night. Jason and his teammates lived in a cycle of training, deploying, fighting, and returning home, only to begin the cycle anew. The details of his specific missions are, and will likely forever remain, classified. These men don't talk about their work, their victories, are not celebrated with parades. They are noted in classified after-action reports, and then they move on to the next target. What is known from the accounts of those who served with him is the kind of operator Jason was. He wasn't the loudest man in the room. He didn't have a swagger. He was the epitome of the quiet professional. He was known for his steady demeanor, his meticulous preparation, and his unwavering calm under pressure. He was the kind of teammate you wanted by your side when everything went wrong. He led by example, his work ethic and dedication speaking far louder than any words. In a community of alpha males, Jason's currency was competence and humility, a combination that earned him the deepest respect of his peers. He was a core member of what some in the unit called the football team, a nod to the unassuming, hard-working, and utterly dependable operators who formed the backbone of the squadron. But this life of a shadow warrior came at a cost. Behind the hardened operator was a man who yearned for normalcy, a man deeply devoted to his family. He was a loving husband to his wife, Sandy, and a doting father to his young son, Colin. The constant deployments created a life of painful contrast. One week, he could be in a vicious firefight in a remote Afghan valley. The next, he could be home trying to teach his son how to ride a bike, the echoes of combat still ringing in his ears. He cherished those moments at home. He fought to keep the two worlds separate, to shield his family from the harsh realities of his profession. He was present, engaged, and loving. Photos from that time show a man with a gentle smile, his eyes filled with warmth as he holds his son. These images are a powerful, heartbreaking reminder that the warrior and the father were one and the same. He was fighting for something tangible, something he could hold in his arms. He was fighting for them. In an interview years later, his father, Rick Workman, remembered Jason's profound love for his own child. He recalled Jason saying, "I never knew I could love anything as much as I love my son." That simple, powerful sentiment cuts through the mystique of the SEAL operator and reveals the heart of the man. This duality is the burden of the modern special operator. They carry the weight of their missions in silence, unable to share the details with those they love most. The psychological toll is immense, yet Jason bore it with the same quiet strength that defined his entire life. He compartmentalized, he focused, and he continued to answer the call. That call came again on a hot summer day in August 2011. The war in Afghanistan was in its 10th year, a grinding, relentless conflict. On August 6th, a unit of U.S. Army Rangers was engaged in a fierce firefight with a large group of Taliban fighters in the Tangi Valley of Wardak Province, a dangerous and contested area west of Kabul. The Rangers were taking fire and needed help. A Quick Reaction Force, or QRF, was scrambled to reinforce them. Given the intensity of the situation, the best were sent. The QRF was a potent force, 17 Navy SEALs from Gold Squadron of DevGru, 5 Naval Special Warfare Support personnel, and 3 Air Force Special Operators. Among them was Petty Officer First Class Jason Workman. They were to be flown into the battle aboard a CH-47 Chinook helicopter, callsign Extortion 17, piloted by an elite crew of 5 Army Night Stalkers from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. A second Chinook, carrying 22 Rangers, was also dispatched. As Extortion 17, a lumbering giant of a helicopter, descended towards the landing zone in the dark, the valley erupted. A Taliban fighter hidden in the shadows shouldered a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. He fired. The RPG, a relatively unsophisticated weapon, flew through the night air. In a 1-in-a-million shot, it struck the helicopter's rear rotor blade. The impact was catastrophic. The Chinook shuddered violently, then began to spin out of control. It plummeted from the sky and slammed into the ground, exploding in a massive fireball. All 30 Americans and 1 U.S. military working dog on board were killed instantly. It was the single deadliest loss of American life in the entire war in Afghanistan. For the Naval Special Warfare community, the loss was unimaginable. 22 of their own, including 17 operators from the legendary SEAL Team 6, were gone. The Brotherhood had suffered a wound deeper than any since the war began. The news of the crash sent a shockwave of grief from the front lines in Afghanistan back to the quiet homes in Virginia Beach and across the nation. Families were shattered. A generation of experience, courage, and expertise within the SEAL community had been wiped out in a single fiery moment. Jason Workman, the quiet warrior from Utah, the devoted husband and father, was among the fallen. In the aftermath, the official narrative was one of a tragic but straightforward combat loss. The men of Extortion 17 were hailed as heroes who died rushing to the aid of their brothers in arms. They were posthumously awarded medals for their valor, including the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart for Jason. Their names were etched onto memorial walls, but for the grieving families, simple platitudes were not enough. As the initial shock gave way to agonizing questions, a series of controversies and debates began to surface, casting a long and complicated shadow over the official story. One of the most persistent and painful questions revolved around the choice of aircraft. Why was a large, relatively slow CH-47 Chinook, often described by aviators as a flying school bus, used for a dangerous insertion into a hot landing zone? Standard procedure often called for smaller, more agile helicopters, like the MH-60 Blackhawks or MH-47s, specially modified for such missions, which could have provided more tactical flexibility. The decision to use the larger, more vulnerable aircraft became a source of intense scrutiny and second-guessing. Even more troubling were the questions surrounding the rules of engagement. Reports and later investigations, including a detailed analysis in the book The Final Flight of Extortion 17 by Ed Dirac, revealed that an AC-130 gunship flying overhead had identified armed Taliban fighters moving into position in the valley before Extortion 17 arrived. The gunship crew requested permission to engage these targets, a move that could have potentially eliminated the very RPG team that shot down the helicopter. For reasons that remain debated, permission was denied by the ground force commander, who wanted to maintain the element of surprise for the landing force. This decision, while perhaps tactically sound in a different context, proved to be fatal. For the families, the thought that their sons' deaths might have been preventable was an almost unbearable burden. Further controversy was fueled by the handling of the crash site and the remains of the fallen. The helicopter's black box, or flight data recorder, was reported to have been washed away in a flash flood, preventing a full analysis of the aircraft's final moments. This, combined with the U.S. military's decision to cremate the remains of the victims, a practice that goes against the religious beliefs of some of the families, led to accusations of a cover-up and fueled painful conspiracy theories. While military officials provided explanations for these actions, citing the extreme circumstances and the condition of the remains, for many families, it only deepened their sense of distrust and their conviction that they were not being told the whole truth. These debates are not about diminishing the heroism of the men who died. They are about the desperate search for answers and accountability that follows any great tragedy. They highlight the terrible complexities of modern warfare, the fog of war, the split-second decisions with life or death consequences, and the agonizing what-ifs that haunt the survivors and the bereaved. The story of Extortion 17 became not just a story of sacrifice, but a cautionary tale about tactics, rules of engagement, and the painful disconnect that can occur between the command decisions and the warriors on the ground. For SEAL Team 6 and the broader naval special warfare community, it was a devastating blow. The loss of so much talent and institutional knowledge in one night was staggering. It forced a reevaluation of tactics and procedures, a hard look at the risks being taken on a nightly basis. The unit and the community as a whole mourned, healed, and adapted, but the scar of that night in the Tangi Valley remains. Culturally, the story of Extortion 17 never quite penetrated the American consciousness in the same way as other events, like the Black Hawk Down incident in Somalia, or even the SEAL's own Operation Red Wings. Perhaps the totality of the loss was too overwhelming, too devoid of a triumphant or redemptive arc. There was no lone survivor to write a book, no dramatic cinematic retelling. There was only the stark, brutal finality of the crash. Its legacy is quieter, more somber, a story primarily told within the military community and among the families of the fallen. His is a story that deserves to be told not because it's unique in its tragedy, but because it is representative of a certain kind of American hero, the humble, dedicated, and profoundly courageous warrior who seeks no fame and expects no reward, save for the respect of his brothers and the safety of his home. In remembering Jason Workman, we honor them all. We acknowledge the silent sacrifice that underpins our way of life, and we pay tribute to a football player from Utah who became one of the world's most elite warriors, and who, in the end, gave everything. His echo is not found in the noise of public acclaim, but in the quiet, profound legacy of a life lived and lost for others. And that's all for today's video. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe so you won't miss out on future uploads. See you next time. See?